I'm happy to be joining you through this USP workshop this afternoon. My name is Carsten. We have quite a number of you who've signed up today. That makes me happy. I'm going to try and make this afternoon's session worth your while. I'd like to suggest the following procedure. We have about an hour and a half together. The idea is that I would like to walk you through some of the ins and outs of how to design a USP or your USP. I have a couple of slides that I have prepared. I'm going to walk you through those slides relatively quickly. And then towards the, let's say the second third and the third of today's session, I would love to invite volunteers out of the group to design their own USP together with me while everybody else can listen. Right now, you might want to consider whether you want to be one of those volunteers to do this exercise live together with me. I understand if this feels a little uncomfortable, but actually I'm sure that for those of you who participate, this will be a rather steep learning curve, and I'm pretty sure, if I may say that, also beneficial. Having said that, just as a little side note, we will be recording today's session. You will have access to the recording, so for future references, the recording or the link will be shared in the community, to which you also have the access that was given to you as you signed in, or signed up, I should say. Great. We are currently about 70 people. Again, I would love to make this hopefully as interactive as possible. So if you have any comments, any questions, things don't make sense, if it goes too fast, please either unmute and speak up, or add your comments or questions to the chat, and we'll try and take those questions one by one. I will also try to be as contextual and as real life as I possibly can. I'm going to make reference to my own personal experience over the last couple of years, and I'm also going to reference my own experience as an entrepreneur over the last couple of years, because I've realized just how important it is to successfully sell a product, in this case, sell yourself in the job market. If you have any expectations other than what I said so far, please either speak up or write them in the chat. Other than that, I'm just going to move on to my next page. Good. For some reason, this doesn't work. The thing is, the USP is an interesting phenomenon. I mean, for the many past years, we all know that products and services in the market for products and services are differentiated based on a certain unique selling proposition. So, for instance, when we go shopping on a weekend to Coop or Migros, we know that there's a different brand behind a yogurt from Nestle, a yogurt from Emmy, or yogurt from Danone. We know that there's a certain brand difference in terms of Mercedes, BMW, or Audi, or others. So the idea of productizing and differentiating the brands in the market for goods and services is something that we're very familiar with. Interestingly enough, though, from where I sit, I'm consulting hundreds and hundreds of individuals every year in their career transition. This idea of differentiating yourself as a product or service in the job market is somewhat counterintuitive. And that, of course, goes hand in hand with the fact that for most people, selling yourself feels a little uncomfortable in the beginning, and which is why most people refrain from it. And so today I'm going to try and give you a couple of tools how to go about differentiating yourself in the market for goods and services as an employee, as an employable person, and how to differentiate yourself against those people who might have a similar background in terms of academic background or professional background, and who might be applying for the same job as you are. Because ultimately you need to see this process of going after a new job as a sales process, and any successful sales process requires a very clear description of the uniqueness of the product and service, and so the same thing holds true for going for a new job. If I may, I would love to start with a story which takes us back maybe 3 or 4 years into the past. it's a true story that happened to me, and which is the reason why we started doing the USP workshop in the beginning. I worked with a chief financial officer of a large MDAX listed, so stock exchange listed company in Germany. About 700 people in his team, large salary, very successful, typical alpha male. And he said to me, Carsten, could you give me access to this leading Swiss luxury brand? And I asked him a question which 3 years ago I thought was almost banal. I asked him, why? And he said to me, well, it's a great company. And I said, sorry, no, why? And he said, well, they have great products. I said, no, sorry. Why would they want to speak to you? And he said, well, I'm a chief financial officer. And I replied, I'm sorry, there are like 50,000 chief financial officers in Switzerland. Why would they be interested in speaking to you? Hang on, he said, I'm the chief financial officer of a listed company. That's why they will want to speak to me. And I replied, I'm sorry, but there are like dozens and dozens of CFOs of listed companies. Tell me, why would this luxury company be in any way interested in speaking with you? The guy paused and looked at me, and I could see his jaw dropping. And in that moment, he realized, well, I have a cool title, I have a huge team, I have a successful track record, but then again, I'm very unspecific. So people don't really know why they should care for me versus caring for other people. So we dug a little in his CV, and we realized that over the past many years, he had grown into leading larger and larger roles within the finance environment. And he had participated in or led many different mergers and acquisition projects, M&A projects. So these are projects whereby companies would buy or sell companies or company parts in order to develop. So to speak, he was a CFO with an additional capability in the area.
See how it goes and do what you feel is right.
So we added this competency to his CV, and slowly but surely, more.
If you think it's average 20, if you think it's really good, 30. No.
Sorry.
Now, of course, for a company that has never gone through an M&A process,
Sorry, there is too much noise
not planning on going through an M&A process,
anything.
this additional capability is totally irrelevant. But for a company that has either just gotten out of an M&A process or is planning on developing internationally maybe and wants to do so by buying companies or company parts, and they're looking for a new finance director, that might exactly be the reason why they might be interested in that person versus other people. And so that kind of gave the background to this workshop. How am I different as a CFO against other CFOs who are also working for listed companies? So where is my differentiating aspect? And so the same question should drive your thinking as we go through today's workshop. The USP has since then become a fixture in the von Rundstedt value chain of workshops and trainings. And we've realized that while the USP obviously is a nice, short, tight, punchy and linguistically refined way to introduce yourself, actually there's more than just one reason why one should have the USP. And so on this page, you see at least 4 different areas where you see it, where your USP can be applied. For instance, if I start on the, so just underneath the your picture on LinkedIn, there's space for I think 140 characters. And so you could add parts of your USP or the entire USP underneath that. So when people look at your profile, they see the USP under the picture. Or you might actually opt for putting the USP in as the first sentence into your summary box, which I think fits some 900 something characters. So the first sentence, the first line of that summary text could also be a USP. Why? Because if people just look at the first part of your profile, they see the text under your picture, but they also see the first line or first line and a half of the summary text. So in either case, they would be able to see the USP. Most people don't click into the profile. They don't actually go to the profile, which is why other places on LinkedIn might not be as adequate for the USP as under your picture and in the summary box. Down on the bottom part on the left side, the CV is the second place where I can imagine putting the USP. Now, the way that we at von Rundstedt suggest to structure a CV, and we have separate sections and separate trainings to explain that to those of you who have not done that with us yet. There are probably 4 different quadrants on the first page of your CV. The second one in the middle, which I call the profile box, is a summary of maybe 3 or 4 bullet points that illustrate who you are, what you have done, that help to, let's say, set you aside and your successes in a commercially relevant way. There, the first bullet point, for instance, should be the USP. Why? Because most people most readers of the CV will, if any, read the first page. Most people don't read the second and third page, and of course, there's no reason to have a CV which is longer than 3 pages. So if the hypothesis is true that people only read the first page, if they stumble across this USP in this central box on your first page, they know who you are and what differentiates you, in which case they might think, interesting profile, I might actually want to read more than just the first page. On the top right of that page, you see the cover letter. Most companies nowadays expect that you not only send in a CV, but also a cover letter. From our own experience, we know that cover letters oftentimes are not read, yet many times you do have to send one. So if it's expected, you have to do it, irrespective of whether it's read or not. So what I would recommend is that in that short cover letter, the USP should also be repeated, because you don't know whether the hiring company or the talent acquisition manager will read only the CV, or maybe only the cover letter, or both, or none, of course. So if you repeat the USP on the CV and the cover letter, you are increasing the chance of making it clear what you stand for and how you are different from other people. So it's basically just a chance to multiply that storytelling in the direction of the hiring company. And then, of course, on the bottom right, you see networking and self-introduction. At von Rundstedt, we take quite a lot of effort in helping our clients understand how to network, how to differentiate between a cold call and a warm call, how to start, how to maintain, how to close a networking conversation. We also teach what is called a 90-second pitch, which is typically the answer to the first question, the typically first question in an interview, which oftentimes sounds like, well, welcome, Carsten, thank you for joining today's interview. Could you please introduce yourself? Which typically triggers this 90-second pitch. In a networking situation, on the other hand, introducing yourself with 90 seconds is probably too long. People won't give you the attention span of 90 seconds. So here again, I would argue that the USP is a great way, a condensed, a distilled way to introduce yourself. Having said that, I would recommend that the USP be the first sentence of your 90-second pitch. So it's like 2 modules of the same thing, the USP being the first sentence and then the 90-second pitch building on top of the USP. The USP you can then use as a standalone introduction of who you are, for instance, in a networking situation, whereas the 90-second pitch, which is the compound of the USP and the rest, you can use that in an interview. I hope that is clear. What I try to communicate on this page is that there are multiple areas where you can, maybe where you should apply the USP. And I hope that it's clear now that this is more than a nice to have. It is a must-have to help differentiate who you are and how you stand out from other people who might have the same academic and or professional background from you. I'm gonna move on, unless you guys speak up or send comments on the chat. So how do you then structure the USP? We'll see that in one of the next pages. I'm going to have an example. And again, we will hear a couple of examples, hopefully, if some of you volunteer to work with me live in front of everybody else. So what I would suggest is that the USP begins with your name, and my name is Carsten, and then you start with I am, because you are going to talk about yourself and then you as a brand. And so one element after my name and the I am piece could be or should be the industry background. So some of you might actually be an expert in a certain industry. Some of you might have spent their entire professional career in healthcare or pharma or biotech, or in financial services, or in chemicals, or metals and mining, and so on. So if you come from one specific industry and you want to stay in that industry, your USP might want to make reference to that specific industry. Again, we'll see and hear what this sounds like a little later. Some of you might actually have jumped from financial services to metals and mining and to consulting and back, in which case the industry-specific background might not be as relevant, yet you might want to see how to extract value of having worked in different industries. So some of you who have actually jumped across these different industries might want to consider, how can I package the learning that I have accumulated as a consequence of having worked in these different industries in order to differentiate myself? We'll see what this looks like and sounds like later on today's session. So point one is focus on the industry background. The second would be focus on the functional background. So some of you might have a production or a research and development background, or HR or IT background. Let's say you were in IT and you want to stay in IT, in which case it probably makes sense to introduce yourself as, I know, an IT developer or an IT security manager and so on. Or maybe you are a finance person, a controller, an accountant, a treasurer, whatever. So you might actually want to put the functional aspects into the USP, just in order to orientate the listener to where you belong. Again, I'm gonna move out and zoom out a little bit. The idea is to help the other person understand who is it that I am and how am I different from other people with a similar academic or professional background. So it's like helping the listener to put me into little boxes, even though I'm not really a big fan of putting people into boxes, but that's what the human being likes to do. We get to know somebody new, and so the mind is trying to put that person that we're meeting for the first time into a certain category, a certain box. And so what we're doing with the USP is we're helping the listener to put us in that box that we want to be put in. We don't want the listener to interpret and to think, well, I guess Carsten is a this or Carsten is a that. I want to sell myself in a way that I want to be understood, which is why I would argue in favor of the industry background and the functional background. The next level, or the next element, is or could be the reference to hierarchy. So again, I'm arguing in favor of introducing yourself on LinkedIn, on your CV, on the cover letter, or in a networking situation, or for that matter, in an interview. So you might actually want to make reference to your hierarchical positioning. Maybe you're an expert in marketing or a professional in HR. Maybe you're a manager. You're maybe a sales manager. Maybe you're a leader or an executive. So you see the slide here. I've been playing with this nomenclature just to make it clear that there are certain differences in terms of hierarchical level that you might want to allude to as you self-present yourself. Again, it helps to understand, it helps the other person to understand what box and what hierarchical box the person should put me into. Again, I want to be the master of my own self-introduction. I don't want other people to do this on my behalf, because the chances are that this is not going to be to my liking. So we have the industry, we have the functional, now we have the hierarchical reference. Now comes the fourth one, and maybe the most interesting one. So think of key facts, success stories, something that you are particularly proud of. So if you go after that question, what am I most proud of in my professional background, you probably find the answer, which most probably should be linked to your USP. Maybe you have managed a very successful transformation program in your recent job, or maybe you have implemented SAP across Europe faster and more efficiently than others have done. Maybe you have developed a new blockchain technology and that became a market leader. Maybe you have helped as an executive assistant, you've helped the executive team member in a major time of transformation or merge and acquisition. So you were there and you basically held, you supported the executive team member to manage the complexity of his different activities. So think of something that you are proud of, something that in addition to the industry background, the functional background, and the hierarchical background helps to compartmentalize your experience and help you define who you are and what you stand for. Ideally, and again, we're going to try and make that happen as we move into the second third of today's session and the third. Ideally, this part, the results should be numeric, fact-based, in absolute and or relevant terms. The more numbers you add, the easier it will be for the other person to understand what you have done. Now I know, and I've heard this comment many times before, that people say, well, I work in an area where there are no KPIs, where I don't know how to link my work to any numeric evidence. Well, that might be true, but just think of the fact that if everybody who comes from that functional background, who's applying for the same role, has difficulties in putting his or her successes into numbers, and you are the only one who has successfully put the successes into numbers, just think of that differentiator that this will produce. So for instance, oftentimes people in finance, in HR, in IT say, well, there are no numeric, there are no commercial aspects that I could use to differentiate myself. And I would argue that is probably not true. There's probably a numeric and a commercial evidence in every job, otherwise that job probably would not exist. But what is that element? And what I would like to get you to think about is, what is that numeric evidence? How can you link your own work, your own activities, your own successes to the commercial success of the company that you worked for? And so in combination of industry background, functional background, hierarchy, and this fact, this success story, this differentiator, in that combination lies the totality of your USP. Ideally, because the listeners typically don't like to listen, we all of us have a very short attention span. I guess we're not 80 people online listening to me. Maybe some of you have already switched off because I've been speaking too much. Maybe some of your minds have wandered off thinking, well, I have to go and feed the cats or go shopping and pick up the kids. Sorry, what was he saying? Oh, I didn't pay attention. Now this happens all the time, but of course in a situation where you want to sell yourself, you need to make sure that the tendency of the mind wandering off of the other person is as limited as possible. In which case, in order to get there, what I would argue is to make sure that your sentences are short and punchy, that the whole USP ideally should not be longer than one sentence. Actually, one of my clients holds the record with 8 words. I'll share this with you at the end of today's session, not to confuse anybody prior to that. So the attention span of the listener of a network, in a network situation or in an interview, or the reader of the CV or the reader of your LinkedIn profile, the attention span is limited. People don't like to read. They don't want to read, and they find it superfluous to spend too much time focusing on somebody else. So if you know that this is a tendency, you're probably well advised to try and shrink your USP and shrink your entire storytelling capability to a minimum. There's always a possibility to add more substance afterwards when the person says, well, Carsten, this was really interesting. Could you share more? Of course I can share more. But the listener can't say, you know what, Carsten, there was too much. Could you take half of the stuff away that you told me? That doesn't work because I've already said it. So try and be distinct, succinct, and let's say synthesized. And afterwards, if there's more interest to learn more details about what you did, of course you can share those. I hope this is not sounding too cryptic so far. I'd like to move into one example now, and then see as we move into the more live and interactive session whether anybody has volunteered so far. So these are just examples. I mean, there are of course thousands and thousands of ways to define and to describe your USP. And I'm not saying that this, what I have here, is the best USP that anybody could think of. It's just a way to illustrate how to do this. So it says so, and I'm sure you read it yourself. I'm a senior project manager. So the senior actually refers to the hierarchy. Project manager refers to the function. With a track record of taking global projects to completion ahead of time and budget, that's the result, in a highly regulated pharma business, which is the industry. Now, what this USP, of course, falls short of is the numeric evidence. So you might actually want to put in place here, instead of saying taking global projects to completion ahead of time and budget, you can say running up to 5 projects in parallel with a total budget of 40 million, something like that. So you can play around with these different elements. So the idea is that within one sentence, people have understood, project manager, that's a box, pharma, and then he seems to be proud of being capable of completing his tasks ahead of time and budget. I'd like to take one step back again. Now, the idea should not be to try and squeeze your entire professional life into one sentence. That's not what I'm propagating here. But think of Lego blocks. Think of a way to compartmentalize your story, like what I've tried to build up until now. And you have a green Lego block and a red Lego block and a black Lego block and so on. And so depending on whom you talk to, depending on how much time you have to introduce yourself, you might just say, use the first Lego block. Like for instance, in this case, you could say, oh, good evening. I'm a senior project manager. Nice to meet you. So if you think more concretely now, at a networking event, you're meeting 2 people at a coffee table. They're both standing there after the presentation of some speaker, drinking a glass of Prosecco, and you're joining them as the third person. Again, the idea is you can't introduce yourself with 90 seconds because that's just too long, but you could say, hello, my name is Karsten. I'm a senior project manager. Nice to meet you. And they would say, oh, very nice to meet you. Would you like to have a glass of Prosecco? Oh, as a matter of fact, yes, I would like to have a glass of Prosecco. Whereas in an interview, of course, you can take the whole sentence and then use that full sentence here, and from there on lead into your 90 seconds. So what I'm saying is, think of these sound bites, think of those sound and sentence structures, create them at home, perfect them in your mind, speak them out loud, because oftentimes when you write something down, it reads well, but when you sound it out, it sounds a little rough, or let's say non-coherent. So what I would recommend is that you write your USP down. By the way, you can do that also for your 90-second pitch, but in this case, write down your your USP, and then sound it out. So you connect your mind through your tongue to your ear. And so then you will realize, that sounded okay, with a little rough here, a little rough there. And then you go back to your piece of paper, you rewrite the USP, you sound it out again. You might actually want to use your telephone to record yourself. And so through this iteration, you get to a point where the USP includes all those relevant aspects and sounds good and reads well. So this is an iterative process that I would heavily recommend you do. In my experience, I have not met anybody who can basically just do this in one instance. And you also see when we go through the practical training, hopefully in a minute, that it takes these iterations. And then once you have a USP, you should go and apply this as often as you can, anywhere, with friends, with family, with clients, with customers, with colleagues, whatever, at Migros, at Coop, anywhere, literally anywhere. Because what you want to do is you want to see if, when you say it out and you share it with somebody, whether they react and whether they understand who you are. I always use the example of my own company that I built 7 years ago, and for which I got private equity funding in the beginning. It took me about a year to get funding, because the story of my company was very clear in my head, but what came out of my mouth, at least in the beginning, wasn't clear enough for the investors to say, hallelujah, this is a great idea, here's my money. So I reworked my pitch, and I reworked it again, and I reworked it again. I exchanged different sound bites and word modules and tried it again, and then reworked it again. And then suddenly I got to a point where I felt, this is good. This actually sat. And as a consequence, you can actually see the reaction in the investor's face, and then the money came. And it's the same thing with pitching yourself in the job market. You need to try and reiterate your USP many, many times. And then you will get to a point where you realize, okay, this is it, this fits good. Don't be confused if in the beginning of your process, you will not be able to do this in one sentence. Typically, the clients that we work with start with 2, maybe even with 3 sentences. And then you realize over time that some of those words in these many sentences are actually duplicates. You've used manager here and managers there. You actually don't need to use the word twice. Maybe you're using it 3 times. 1 time is enough. So as you go through this iteration, you can do away with some of those duplicates, and that helps to shrink the text. Sometimes you realize that the stories that you tell might be interesting for you, but actually they don't help sell you. And so you go through this iteration process, and over time it will get shorter and punchier and tighter and more succinct. It's an iteration. Good. Are there any questions before we try this? No comments? Everything is clear as mud, I guess.
I have a question.
Okay. Now, I don't know if anybody would like to play with me this afternoon, if anybody is daring enough to try this live in front of everybody else. I'm hoping that this will be the case. Typically, when I do this workshop, people do join in, but of course, since this is a live session and it was open invitation, I don't know if anybody will. I'll just stop here and see if anybody wants to give it a try.
I'm happy to do it.
While you're thinking of whether you should volunteer,
Hello?
the others can sit down and on a piece of paper or on their iPad, formulate your own sentences, starting with I am, or my name is I am, and then you put in the job that you're applying for, because the USP has to be future oriented. It has to fit the role that you will be applying for. Let's say, if I used to be in finance, but now I'm applying for HR, it makes no sense to say, hello, my name is Carsten, I'm a finance professional, because then the guy who is listening says, well, why is he applying for a job in HR then? So the role, the USP ideally includes the nomenclature, the terminology of the job that you're applying for. Everybody has at least one USP, but this one USP might come in different shades of gray. I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm a financial controller. I might be a controller in head office. I might be a controller in a division or in a region or in a production facility or a product controller. I'm still a controller, I'm not an accountant. So you have different shades of gray.
Is that the case maybe?
Carsten, can you hear us?
Yes.
No. Oh, fine, because there are some questions in the chat.
Good.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, Carsten?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to be the guinea pig.
The guinea pig?
Yeah.
Who's speaking?
Vinka. My name is Vinka.
Vinka. Give me a second, Vinka, and long live the guinea pigs. Vinka. May I call you leader instead of a guinea pig afterwards? Let me just finish my story, Vinka, and I'll come back to you in a second, okay? So everybody has at least one USP that might change, let's say, in these shades of gray. Some people have 2 distinct USPs. Let's say if you're equally likely to get a job in HR or in finance, you might want to have 2 different USPs. Now, of course, in your CV, when you're applying for a job in a company, it doesn't really matter because you're just going to use that one USP because you're applying either for the finance or for the HR job. It gets a bit more difficult on LinkedIn because there, of course, theoretically, you could change your profile every day, but you don't know when people will actually look at your profile. So therefore, LinkedIn, we might need to find like an umbrella USP under which you can fit the finance and the HR USP, as we just mentioned. And there's some rare cases of people who have 3 types of USP. For instance, I had a client some years back, the COO of one of the largest consulting companies. And so in his area, he was responsible for finance, HR, IT, security, and a few others. So theoretically, he could have had 3 USPs, but he didn't want to. He opted only for 1. So what I wanted to tell you is that not only does the USP need to have this reference to industry, function, hierarchy, and the results, but it should be short and punchy and numeric. And you might actually want to opt for different types of USPs depending on whom you're talking to, depending on what job you're going after. Sometimes you have nuances in your USP, sometimes you have 2 distinctly different USPs. I hope that makes sense. And it will all sound a little less cryptic once we go through a couple of real exercises. Vinka, thank you for being the icebreaker. If you want to share your USP, the way that it's formulated now, and I will help you then readjust. Maybe it's already perfect. Otherwise, anybody can join in. The idea is, because this is a community, we give and take. So if you hear now Vinka sharing her USP, anybody can join and say, I would add this, I would change that, I think this is good, I think this should be changed, and so on. Okay, Vinka,
Okay.
over to you.
So I'm a senior marketing and business expert who is great at starting new businesses and implementing new ways of working in international companies.
Great at starting new businesses.
Yeah, new brands and new ways of working.
Okay, of working in international businesses.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So this by itself sounds clear. I understand you're a senior marketing and business expert. So, and please, everybody, I have a tendency to be rather direct. I'm never hurtful, but I have a tendency to be direct.
Great.
So, Vinka, I hope you bear with me.
Yeah.
Because I realized that this is the quickest way for others to learn. So I understand you sit in marketing. So that's the box that I would put you in. I'm not sure what I understand or what I should understand under business expert. So that's one question I have. The senior marketing expert makes sense, but the business expert, I'm not so sure. And then you say great at starting new businesses and new ways of working.
Yeah.
So what does starting new businesses mean? Have you founded companies? Have you?
No. I always worked in most of the time in international companies, but in different type of business. But very often I am the one who is going to be launch a completely new brand, assess what are the new business potential and implementing them.
What industry?
So food, pharma, luxury, so different types. Yeah. But the latest one I was in pharma and cosmetics. Okay.
So, and you have done new brands. So you've placed new brands in the markets in 3 different industries.
Yeah.
So this, remember everybody, when I said the link to the industry might be interesting if you have only been in one industry and you want to stay there. Now in Vinka's case, she has done this I hope successfully across 3 different industries. So you have probably learned how is new brand placement different in the food industry from the pharma industry, from the luxury industry. Yeah. So there's probably a relatively steep learning curve, which I think you should sell, because it gives the listener the impression she knows, or you know what you're talking about, because you've done this successfully in different industries. Okay. But before we get there, are there any brands that people would know?
There is one which is no, I don't want to say the brands. The reason is because I don't want to stay in international companies. I want to start my business, so I'm not interested in selling the brands. But there are some which are known. Yes. So
you want to start your own?
Yes.
Okay, and you want to position yourself as a brand launcher, brand placement, or what's the role?
Okay, so it's a process. Huh? I'm just at the beginning of it, so excuse me if I'm not 200% clear.
Long live entrepreneurship.
But what I would like is if I am in a networking situation, that to show that also I've been always working in international companies. It makes sense for me to start a new business, because it's always this part which interested me, working in international company, being at the beginning, being able to assess potentials and implementing what has been assessed, and not managing brands like ongoing. I don't know if it's clear.
Yes, and I'm going to take a step back, and now again, input for everybody. I'm going to refer to my own company again. So I talked about the investors, the private equity investors that I've got for my own company. In that process of looking for investors, I realized that investors would differentiate between what they call a headache pill and a vitamin pill. So the headache pill is a company that solves the headache in a certain market, whereas the vitamin pill is a nice to have, I'm not really that sick kind of thing. So in this case, you need to position yourself as a headache pill, as a must have, not as a nice to have. So the question is, what headache should a company have to come to you, and you are the right person or the right company to solve that headache? And that's the same thing for everybody else. If you're a marketing expert or an HR expert or finance, whatever, what's the pain point? Ideal typically, what's the pain point of the company or the customer for which you can provide the remedy, the headache pill? So Vinka, back to you. If I'm a company, why should I come to you? What's my headache?
That's a good question.
Thank you. Do you launch brands? Do you help?
I did, yeah. I launched brands, yeah, quite a few actually, and successfully.
That's what you want to do in the future.
No, I want to start a business, which is going to be, the brand is going to be me in the first place, and in quite a different area actually than what I'm doing now.
But what is it going to do?
Sorry?
What is it that you're going to do?
Sustainability and art.
Sustainability and art. Also, that's something very different.
Yeah, but it can be linked. But I have ideas. So yeah. So, but it's the point for me. It's when I think about it, it's the same thing. Starting, you know, I'm in touch with a lot of people, and what I realize is very often they are very good technical experts, but they don't know how to sell. And me, I'm not going to be very humble, but I think I have some ideas on how to assess a market, assess a target, assess a positioning, assess a strategy, and implement it. So I don't know if it answers your question.
Yes, I'm going to put on my black cap. I'm going to push you a little bit.
Yeah, please.
What's my, if I come to you, what's my pain point? Am I looking for somebody who helps me in the area of sustainability, or art, or what is it?
What can I do for you?
Yes.
I can help you to define your positioning, refine your targeting, and reach the right people as per what you want to do.
Okay, in the area of sustainability, not in the area of branding.
By doing branding, branding is just a way.
Okay.
Branding, it's not the substance, it's not the sense. Marketing is just a tool.
So you could say, I'm going to try and put words in your mouth. Bear with me, it's probably not going to be completely
please.
I'm a marketing expert, and I help companies place new products, place sustainable products in new markets.
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
Again, there's no number there yet. This is just an idea, so it's kind of like a shell that you can now put other elements in there. But is that going the right direction?
It's going the right direction, except that I don't want to help. It's potentially an idea as well, but I want to start my business. I don't want to help others doing things.
But what is it that I still don't get what your business model is?
I don't know yet, and I'm not sure I want to speak about that here. You know, it's like,
because it might be a little difficult to put a USP around it. I give you feedback on that.
Okay, so then let's say on what you say. That's fair. Your comment is fair. Yeah, it's true. I'm too vague, and I'm not ready to share very clearly. So as per what you just said before, it's going in the right direction. Yes.
Because I thought what I thought I heard you say was something in the area of consulting.
It can be, yeah. But yeah, let's say that. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So then again, I would repeat something as I said before. You can say I'm a sustainability expert, and I apply my corporate marketing and branding experience to help to place new brands in new markets.
Yeah. That fits quite well. Yeah.
So to play?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion? We can come back to you, Vinka. Let's just stop here. Let's see if there are others who want to volunteer, and then we can come back, because there's a learning curve built into this. So the more you hear other people talk about their USP, the clearer it becomes.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being the icebreaker. But I hope that we have a second person now to play with us. And we'll come back to you in a short while. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I have a question. Where there is something that I'm not clear about. Can you hear me well?
Yes, this is Isabel.
Yes, this is Isabel, right. Okay, so the question I have is about the way you introduce yourself. I don't have a job right now, and I don't feel comfortable of introducing me with the function I had last, which was general manager. So should I say I'm a general manager specialized in cosmetic industry, for example?
Yes.
This sounds...
Yes, yes.
Yes?
Yes, absolutely. Because I mean, just because you are in between jobs doesn't mean that you're not a general manager.
Okay.
And actually, from where I sit, working with hundreds of people every year, I hear that very often. People lose their job or they're in between jobs and they feel that they have no raison d'etre. They are not, let's say, they're not as important as they used to be, which is not true. I mean, Von Rundstedt has built a business based on people transitioning from one job to the other. It happens all the time. It happens everywhere. So just because we are between jobs doesn't mean anything good or bad. If you were a general manager before and if you're applying for a general manager role afterwards, that's what you are, and that's what I would sell.
Okay.
Does that help, Isabel?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Do you want to share your USP?
Okay, not sure. I'm quite ready though. So I'm a general manager specialized in the cosmetic and perfume industry, with a track record of opening businesses and foreign experiences.
Okay.
I need to work on the numeric part though.
Sure. So if you're a general manager, it's the number one. It's the PDG, it's the CEO, that kind of thing, yeah?
No, general manager in charge of a department, big department for a multinational.
Okay, for what? For which one?
L'Occitane en Provence.
No, sorry, for what department?
Oh, it was a travel retail department.
Travel retail. And is that a job that you want to go back into, or something else?
I want to go back to something else.
Okay, and so that would be what? Sales, or is that?
Sales, yes, definitely.
It's a sales role.
It's a sales role, yeah.
So you had a top line responsibility or bottom line responsibility or both?
Top
line.
Oh, actually both top and bottom line, yeah.
Okay, so this is a massive organization that you worked for. Can you share the top line that you were responsible for? 1 million, 10 million, 100 million?
No, it was 80 million. 80 million retail sales.
80.
I'm sorry?
80.
80, 80, yeah, 80 million.
So this is again, because people want to be able to box people, being responsible for a sales volume of 1 million is different from being responsible for a sales volume of 10 or 50, 100 or a billion. So in order to differentiate yourself, maybe you want to think about the 80 million to sell it, only if you are allowed to do so. So if this is a number that is publicly available, otherwise you say close to 100 million, so you kind of camouflage it a little bit. You don't want to be caught sharing financial data from your past employers, because some new employers might think, interesting, she's sharing secret information from my past employer. The moment we hire her, she's going to do the same thing with our financial data. So this is like shooting yourself in the foot. Careful. But if you're allowed to use those 80 million, I think this is very cool. Where was that organization when you took office? Did they used to sell 100 million and you successfully brought it down to 80 million?
Actually, I started with them opening a subsidiary in the US, in Florida. And then I moved to Geneva to a higher position, being in charge of the travel retail for the Americas, plus the EMEA zone. I don't know if you're familiar with EMEA.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. But my question is the 80 million top line.
Yeah.
That was what you were responsible for.
Yeah.
From where to where did you take that top line? From 50 million to 80 million, from 1 million to 80 million, or from 200 million down to 80 million?
That's I need to go back to the calculation. I opened the Americas one from scratch, but I took over the European one after, and I'm not sure about the European part.
So what I would do, again, it's a sales process.
Okay.
The 80 million per se sounds interesting, but then again, if you successfully decrease the volume from 200 million to 80 million, this is maybe not a success story. Yeah. If you increase it from 1 million to 80 million, of course, this is Very cool.
Okay.
So what you want to do, all of you, you might want to think about what increase have you been responsible for? Or you could say, if you're not allowed to use that number, if you can't say I took it from 50 million to 80 million because the number is not publicly available, you could say I increased it by 5% year over year, or I increased it 10% more than the industry average. Or you can say I beat the internal targets by 6% or double digits or something like that. So what you want to do is you want to stand out. You want to make yourself different from anybody else.
Okay.
There will be, for the role that you will be applying for, Isabel, there will be other people who will also have had top line responsibility. So how can you differentiate yourself? The 80 million is good, but you might, excuse my French, you might actually sound a bit more sexy.
Okay.
Plus 10% or doubled, or you dominated the market by increasing the market share to 15%, something.
Okay.
Do you see my point?
Yeah, clearly.
So, and then of course, the pain point analogy that I used before is necessary. So if I'm a company, L'Oreal, I'm just going to take L'Oreal, what pain point should I have in my division for you to be the right candidate? Are you the growth kind of key account or sales manager? Are you a manager for stability? Are you a key account manager or sales manager for increasing EBIT in a stable market portfolio? So what's my pain point in my company in order for you to be the right candidate? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Okay. Okay.
I'm not gonna let you off the hook yet, Isabel. You want to try again?
You want me to try again?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Okay. So.
Learning.
Okay. So I'm general manager with a strong experience in cosmetic industry, who has opened a subsidiary and increased the share of the market by, let's say, 5% or 10%.
Is that good or bad?
That's the thing. Again, I need to go back to figures. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, don't have to be sorry. I mean, none of us were prepared for this, so don't have to be sorry. I'm just pushing you a little bit because I want you to get to the point where these numbers help to differentiate you.
Okay, got it.
So you come from cosmetics and you want to go back into cosmetics.
I'm not sure yet. I'm just very, very starting the process.
So what about because cosmetics is in FMCG.
I'm sorry?
Cosmetics sits in the FMCG industry.
Yeah.
Fast-moving consumer goods.
Yeah.
Is that the industry you want to stay in?
That, again, I don't know. Possibly, but if there is anything else opening, why not?
Okay, so general manager, or I'm a sales executive. I'm a sales leader. How big was the team that you led?
It was mainly salespeople.
How many?
I had a team of 30 people.
30 people, okay. And then 80 million turnover. So I'm a sales executive with a background in fast-moving consumer goods. And I'm proud to have, and then you need to use those numbers, proud to have doubled the top line in only 3 years. And proud to have dominated the market across EMEA.
Okay.
Proud to have extended or expanded the market dominance of my products over a 5-year period, over the 5-year period that I led that team, something like that. Always think of how can I make myself sound more interesting than others might. And numbers are a really good way to do so.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much. You said at the beginning, sorry, sales leader more than general manager, right?
Because general manager it's not specific enough, because it could be in HR, in finance, in anything. So if it's sales that you come from, or let's say if you are in what's it called? A key account. I would use those terms because it helps the listener to put you in a box.
Okay.
Otherwise, you might say something, but people might not be able to connect it.
Okay. So sales leader sounds good to you.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
Okay. we can come back to you in the second round. Anybody else who wants to go have a go?
I can go. Karsten, this is Sahar. I don't know if you can hear me.
Hey, Sahar. Nope,
Hi.
I can hear you. Go ahead, Sahar.
So I just wrote this down now while you guys were speaking, so I didn't have anything before. I wrote down, I am a business and HR leader with experience in both large matrix organization and startups, and I have extensive experience in transformation, M&A, and growth in international companies.
Okay, that was a bit faster than I could write.
Sorry.
I'm a business and HR leader with an experience in large and startups.
In large matrix and startups with,
Yeah.
with extensive experience in transformation, M&A, merger and acquisition, and growth in international companies.
Okay. Let's try something new now. You've all heard Sahar's USP. Would anybody like to comment? What did you hear? What did you like? How did it resonate? What would you change? Let's just see if you have comments. And then, of course, I'll give you mine, Sahar.
Yeah.
But we need volunteers. Life is a give and take.
It's me here, it's Monica. I want to say that one thing I liked very much is the use of transform and growth. Like this gave me like a sense of energy of what you are doing and how you can help.
Yep.
Okay.
So the word transformation resonated for you. Great, Monica. Any other comments?
Yes. From the beginning, you said I'm a business manager and HR manager or something like that.
Yep.
And the business manager can be everything. So I would change that.
So that's actually a good point, because that is one thing I'm a bit stuck with, because in my last job towards the end, I had also IT quality and office management and everything reporting to me. And I would like to expand more in that, but I do have like 10 years of solid HR experience, but I don't want to be necessarily defined purely by HR.
I think this is, if I may jump in here. So what Sahar is doing there is she's adding words that I would term fishing hooks. So if you think of going fishing, you have these little fishing hooks, and sometimes it makes sense to throw out words, hoping or expecting that people will swallow these hooks and say, "Business manager, what the hell does that mean?" And that gives you the chance to actually speak more about what you did. Because my argument is that if you unilaterally decide to talk about yourself a long time, people will probably switch off. But then again, if you get a question like, "Oh, what do you mean by business manager?" Or "What do you mean by transformation?" Or "What did you do?" You actually have the authority, you have the right to continue talking about yourself. So actually, I like that. And so if you see it as a fishing hook, I would keep it. What would the role be, Sahar, that you would be going after in the next step?
It could be still HR, but preferably more into business operations. So doing HR as well as other things like office management and IT, and just the whole overall internal business processes. So not external, not sales, not business development, just everything to do with the infrastructure, the people, the company, the locations, the offices, and all that.
So what you could say, I'm an international HR leader, proud to have been given the responsibility to lead other teams in large-scale international transformations and M&A processes.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Because that kind of still gives you the job title head of HR, and it differentiates you from other heads of HR who have done only HR. Mm-hmm. And the words proud to have been entrusted with, you can play around with something like that, means somebody in the organization, probably the CEO or the board or whoever, said, "Sahar is good in HR, but she's also good, and we'll just give her more stuff and she will help us make this transformation a success."
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Feels good, because it also feels a bit too premature to say that I've done that, like operations for a long time. I did it only for maybe a year, a bit more. So my experience in that is not so extensive. So this way it feels more genuine.
Okay. Is it good enough for now, or should we drill one level deeper?
Up to you. It's your time.
So, and again, this is feedback to everybody, not just Sahar. The word transformation is, of course, for somebody like me in my role, something I hear every day. Everybody seems to be working on transformations, yet it gets worse with the word digitalization. I mean, I've not seen a single company that actually has truly digitalized. So the question is, if you want to use these words, you need to have a really rock solid example later on. If people like me would ask you in an interview, what do you mean by transformation? Or you do away with these things. I call them word shells. It's relatively easy to use these word shells. It's not so easy to give proof points. So transformation, M&A is clear, because that's a process that has been going on. You buy or sell, and then you have to integrate. You have to post-merger integrate the companies and so on. So I think this, in combination with fast-paced growth, particularly in the startup environment, might be something that is probably better to sell. Unless you have a really rock-solid example for transformation.
I do, from my time working in Mondelez. We transformed the whole company. We got rid of 200 people, moved all of HR across Europe to UK. So I was part of that project team there.
Okay. I would still think though that this could be a side note. I think the main differentiator is the IT and the office manager and the other roles that you had.
Yeah.
Pretty much every HR department nowadays is outsourcing, offshoring, right-sizing, resizing. So they all do that. It's good that you have the experience, because that means you can continue in that playing field, but I'm not sure that it's a strong enough differentiator.
Good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And one last point, and then I'll let you off the hook. In terms of M&A, could you point out numbers? Could you showcase the budget responsibilities, or the market presence, the growth numbers, something that kind of illustrates a bit more the commercial side? Again, because you want to set yourself aside from the HR people. HR people oftentimes, and I used to be one, so I'm allowed to say that, they don't think very commercially, typically. Yet, if you are one who actually also holds this commercial responsibility, or let's say the more business responsibility, and you show this through using numbers, I guess this can heavily differentiate you.
Unfortunately, I don't have that for the M&A, but for example, for the fast growth, I could say in 3 years, we increased the company 4 times, or grew it from 20 to 80 people.
Okay.
Something like that.
So you have been through a downsizing and an offshoring and a quadrupling in 3 years in different companies.
Yeah.
Okay. And this might be something interesting also to share.
Okay.
So again, thinking about pain points, if I'm a company that is they're expecting a massive growth, you might be a person. If I'm a company that is planning on going through a transformation, outsourcing, offshoring of my HR team or others, you might be my case, my person. And in general, if I'm, let's say, I'm the startup CEO of a CEO of 1,000 people company, and I'm looking for somebody who take over a broader than an HR role, like a COO kind of HR role, your business experience across IT and office management might be actually the reason why I might be interested in looking at your profile.
Yep.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect, Eden.
Thank you.
Not sure it was perfect, yeah, but getting there.
Interesting question. How about soft skills? My personality is also my differentiation.
Yeah. Thank you. This is a very good and very relevant question, and a question that I get very often. And I always say, I always argue or answer with the same answer, and I'm not sure that's a good answer, but it's the only answer I have. I used to work for the World Economic Forum. Some of you might have seen my LinkedIn profile. Others of you know me, of course. So I used to go to Davos, to the annual meeting in Davos every year. So of course, all these leaders show up in Davos. And I'm not sure that all these leaders qualify for what I think is a leader. The problem is there's no ISO 9001 certification for leadership, because if that were the case, most of the people who think they are a leader probably would not qualify. So why I'm using this as an example is everybody says that they are people and they're team players, they're people-minded, they're customer-centric, they're strategic and operational, they're resilient and so on. Everybody says that. Nobody says, I'm bad with people, I hate clients, I'm not strategic, I don't get stuff done and so on. So all these soft skills, while they're of course much more difficult to develop than hard skills, unfortunately, they can't be used to differentiate. So when people come to me and they argue that they are a strong leader, so I'd say, yes, this might be true, but how can you prove it? Don't use the word leadership, because anybody can, and actually everybody does use the word leadership, and everybody uses the word team player or people person or what have you. Find an example that illustrates your leadership capability and use that example rather than this word shell, leadership or customer centricity or whatever else instead. I don't know who asked that question, but Pia, does that answer your question?
Not really. To be honest, I think it too conventional, this answer.
Okay.
And I didn't think about general adjectives like, yeah, I'm a good leader or so. Really very, very specific.
Like what? What would you say?
For example, I'm a person that is that is very reflected, and for some positions that is I think that's a real asset. Or also in the whole topic of new work, where other skills are important to me, seems to me.
Okay.
But it's okay. I understand what you mean.
I love to be challenged, and so I agree. So we have assessment centers for some of our large clients. We have another full-day assessment center tomorrow and on Wednesday. And of course, the ability to self-reflect is something that is built into our assessment centers. And while I think this is one of the key strengths, I think there are two problems. First of all, people tend to overestimate their ability, and second, there's no, let's say, common denominator to identify, to analyze a person's ability. So I'm not arguing against your ability to self-reflect. I think it's wonderful that you say so, but rather than using that word, I would show it. I would illustrate it in stories that you share.
Yes, that's fine.
Let's say and over this, I'm going to try and put words in your mouth. I'm totally going to hallucinate now. And over the time, I have understood what people in my teams are driven by. I've understood how to read my clients, and I've learned how to get a sense for my environment. Because that's in effect that's what reflection means. But it is so much more tangible than the word reflection.
Yeah, but then there's no space in the USP pitch. I mean, these are then sentences that comes later.
And so, why do you think that that the reflection is important enough to be put into the USP?
No, I'm just I'm thinking about, because I'm not at the point of formulating my USP, but it's I will think about it.
Okay.
Because I have to feel comfortable.
Sure.
Yeah.
What role would you go after?
I don't know yet, but maybe foundation director.
Stiftung.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So head of a foundation.
Yes.
So an NGO.
Yes, maybe.
Okay. Okay. So and you may I ask where you come from? Not in terms of country, but in terms of...
Yeah, I'm still working. I'm at a corporate foundation.
At a corporate foundation. Okay, so you've been in foundations for some years now?
Yes, and we we build up a startup, social startup.
Okay, so what are the pain points that a foundation would have, and what's the remedy that you can bring?
I don't want to speak about my USP at the moment. I'm exploring, and okay. I'm at this webinar to listen. Okay. I'm happy to listen.
Understood. And again, I apologize if I stepped on your virtual toes.
No, that's fine.
I just think that, you know, some things just sell better than others and more directly, and the ability to self-reflect, even if you have it, it doesn't mean that the listener has it. So there might be a disconnect. I'm not arguing against you saying that you're reflected, or not, on the contrary, but I'm just saying that maybe it is not the strongest argument that speaks in your favor when you want to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, of course. It was just an example. Okay. Yeah, because all these sayings about these conventional sayings, they are boring to me. So I'm thinking about, and communication is something that is important to me. So what will be a description that fits to me?
Okay.
Yes.
If ever, I mean, obviously we do this for a living here at Von Rundstedt. If you need to talk to me bilaterally, of course you can do so. We have sessions and programs to do exactly that.
Yeah, that's great. No, I'm already at Von Rundstedt, but not the beginning.
In which case, happy to reconnect.
Thanks.
Can we move on, Pia? Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Sure. Anybody else? We probably have time for one, maybe two more.
Yes, okay, I'm good. I'm Patrick.
Patrick.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, with 20 years of expertise in commercial and operational management with P&L responsibilities, I have developed a successful approach in driving retail performance and optimizing wholesale distribution.
Okay. You were, at least on my side, you were cut off a little bit. I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Should I try again?
Yes, and more slowly, please. 30 years of commercial something?
With 20 years of expertise in commercial and operational management, with P&L responsibilities, have developed a successful approach in driving retail performance and optimizing wholesale distribution.
So you are positioning yourself both in the retail and the wholesale market?
Yes, B2B and B2C.
Of your 20 years, have you done 10 years in each, or what is the dominant experience?
Sometimes retail and sometimes both, depending.
Okay. So you mentioned P&L. May I ask how much?
What do you mean in the top line, bottom line?
The amount of top line or bottom line, or
it was more than 30 million.
30 million. Line. 30 million top line. Okay. And so when you say you successful something, and when it was too fast, what does
the approach?
Approach. What's a successful approach? What do you mean by that?
By meaning that I managed to improve significantly retail performance.
By how much?
By sales. In 3 years, we did more than 15%.
So 5% per year, compound of 50%.
Yeah.
How does that compare to the targets that were given to you, and how does it compare to market?
But basically, in terms of targets, I managed to succeed, to over-succeed the objectives during 3 years.
So basically, what you're trying to sell here, or what you could be selling, is exceeding targets.
Yeah.
So that's one word. What about exceeding targets? And can you also say industry averages or market averages?
Now it's difficult to know because there's no really figures on the market. Sorry?
Maybe difficult to know, but not impossible.
Exactly.
Again, I'm just pushing you a little bit.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So one thing is that you exceed your own target in the company. And there's something very else to say, I actually exceeded the averages in the industry, which means I'm not only better than the company that I work for or the targets, I'm actually better than the industry. I don't know whether you can say that, and I'm not sure that you feel comfortable with that. But if you were to say that, of course, this is a main differentiator, which means.
And I need good figures to say that.
Yes. Yeah.
And to know the figures exactly. Yeah.
If I can just use Patrick's example and share this with everybody, the way that I would try and differentiate these numeric pieces of evidence. So there are four phases. The phase 0, I don't give any numeric example. Phase 1 is I give the example of 10 million P&L, which is a little bit more clear than no number at all. The second is exceeding internal targets. Yeah, 10 million P&L exceeding targets by 5%. And the ultimate one is to say 10 million top line exceeding market growth rates by 5%. So that's the spectrum, from no numbers to just a number, to numbers in comparison to the internal targets, to numbers in comparison with the total market. So what this does, again, we're training how to self-sell in this course. The more you compare yourself to the market, the more you will stand out. The less numbers you use, the more difficult it will be for the listener to say, well, is he better or is she better? So basically you're applicating the own sales role to the listener. So I'm arguing for as many numbers as possible, ideally in comparison to the market.
But in that case, Carsten, this question, if you give a figure, of course, in the USPs, you have the very shorts. So you might give only one figure, which relate only one experience you have in your past.
Yeah, and so it could be that you change the USP depending on the company that you're talking to. So in one case, it might be a company that is looking for in wholesale that is looking to maintain market share and just increase EBIT. Another company might be in retail and they want to grow top line and keep EBIT at least at the same pace. So you adjust your USP. But in either case, I think the numbers are necessary in order to help the others understand whether this is good or bad, because otherwise it's very difficult to judge.
Of course.
Does that make sense, Patrick?
Yeah, completely makes sense.
You want to try again?
Okay. So with 20 years of expertise in commercial and operational management with P&L responsibility, I have developed a successful approach in driving retail performance and optimizing wholesale distribution, with as results objective exceeding during 3 years.
Exceeding both internal and market targets.
Yeah.
Does that, because I mean, the last part would basically then be the numbers evidence.
Exactly.
How does it feel?
Good. But you just have to, as you said, it has to be short. So this one is still a bit too long as USP. It can make more sense in my 90 seconds.
I would drop the 20 years because 20 years per se doesn't sell. Okay. Because if 20 years would sell, people could say, oh, but there's somebody with 21 years experience, that must be better. But it's not. Okay. You can be more successful in 12 years and even less successful in 38 years. So the experience doesn't really count, not in the USP. So you can say, so you're salesperson, no?
Yes.
And the industry has been what?
It's luxury, but it's not really something I really too much to focus on.
I'm a commercial and operational leader or manager. And over the years, I have developed my own successful approach to outperforming internal and market targets.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Shorter. No, interesting. Yeah, good.
I mean, is it true what I just said? I mean, again, I don't know you that well. I mean, does it fit? Does it resonate with you?
It's quite true. It's resonate, and I love this idea to my own, because it's stick to me. I think that's quite nice words.
Yes. Yeah. It might not fit to every company, but it's your approach, and over the years you've proven it to be useful and successful.
Yeah.
Good. We only have, is that okay, Patrick?
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Pia, Sahar, Isabel, and Anka, do we want to go back to you? Are there any thoughts that have come up since you shared and showcased your USP with us? Do you have a question you want to come back to one of those USPs?
Not for me, thank you. I'm clear.
Okay.
Same here, also fine, thanks.
Great.
Austin?
Yes?
Tracy, if you're willing to play on another one.
Sure.
A quickly written one, purely to revisit a couple of questions that have come to mind while you've gone through the others. When you mentioned fishing hooks and shell words, I understood that the same words could qualify as both.
Yes.
So maybe I misunderstood that, and maybe it really depends if you're pitching for a particular role or the size of a company.
Could be both, yes.
Okay. And then I'm also pondering on the questions we had about our personalities making us different. Mm-hmm. So I've written a quick one that doesn't really follow your structure, but is an example of how I might thought I might put personality in it, and we might look at which bits could work and which bits, why they don't work.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm an international leader in finance, business partnering and business transformation. I excel when I'm out of my comfort zone and use this to unite cross-functional teams to realize new revenue streams, reduce working capital, and build connected, robust and optimized processes.
Okay. Could you read it again, please? Because I think it was too fast for everybody.
Okay. I'm an international leader in finance, business partnering, and business transformation. I excel when I'm out of my comfort zone and use this to unite cross-functional teams to realize new revenue streams, reduce working capital, and build connected, robust, and optimized processes.
Okay. May I ask the other participants what they think of Tracy's USP, and then of course I'll give you my feedback.
Yeah.
Anybody? Nobody? Okay.
Yes, it's Nicole speaking. Hello.
Nicole.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes. Well, I found the sentence brilliant, so thank you. In fact, I'm an HR leader, so it opens many questions for the recruiter, and maybe you have to prepare very clearly the answers you want to give based on this sentence, because you could be maybe a bit stressed by the answers. So that's. But otherwise, I like the sentence and the way she presents herself. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah. I also like it. I like the first part. I'm an international leader in finance, and then you add business partnering and transformation.
Right, Carsten. There's no comma between finance and business partnering. It's one thing.
Finance. Okay. So why not call yourself, I'm a finance business partner, like an HR business partner?
Because I'm not. It's a process I went through to get to where I am, but it's not what I am now.
So what would the job be that you would apply for?
The job would probably be a finance director for a business unit or business segment. So that you're covering, you have the team that does the controlling and the forecasting, and you split your time between the finance team and your business peers.
Okay, so I'm a head of finance?
The way the job descriptions I'm reading for the head of finance are more transactional and more day-to-day. They don't have the business continuity piece to them.
Yeah, but of course you have to fit to the job availabilities.
Yeah, and that's the bit I'm struggling with.
In sales, it's not about what the seller wants to sell; it's what the buyer wants buy. So it has to fit to the nomenclature and to the structure and let's say the concept of the hiring company. And they will probably have a head of controlling, head of finance, finance business partner, and so on, these kinds of roles. And then I would use that to create the link between you and that role.
And I would if that was the role I want, but I don't.
But what role do you want?
The role that I've described is the role I find occasionally, but for obvious reasons, they want fluent German speaking. So you're right, I have to decide, do I prefer to do a traditional finance role, which in Switzerland tends to be a corporate controller role, which isn't what I want to do, and there'd be competition with people that can do it far better than I can.
Okay.
Or do I go into a more business transformation role?
Okay.
Now, the business transformation roles are either functional specific, and that's why I've put the cross-functional bit into the USP, in that my transformation journey was not finance functional specific. It was more like optimizing the baton changes in a relay so that functions can concentrate on their function and I do the handovers, the bit that usually gets missing and where things come undone.
Okay.
And I haven't seen that kind of role advertised. The other transformation roles I see are more around PMO and project management. And I can only base that on how I've seen project management in my old company, and that was more task listing and ticking and chasing and PowerPoints with colours on. And it's not me, it's too back office.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're right, I understand what you're saying, I need to map to what's available.
Yes.
I'm not warming to much of what's available.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's demand and supply, I guess. So it has to fit. I think the more concrete you fit to the nomenclature that companies use, finance business partner, head of controlling, and so on. I mean, the rest, the transformation and the other stuff is all these are roles within functions, or let's say they are activities within roles, I should say. They're not jobs per se. There is no let's say head of reducing capital, working capital, or revenue stream manager. These things don't exist. They are part of, let's say, a sales role, part of a controlling role. So I think what I'm hearing you say is, I would call myself a finance business partner or head of finance, if you want to call yourself that. And then the other things to me are these are success stories that you can then share in a conversation to give more texture, more depth into what you've done and what you stand for. And I'm not sure that they would make sense in a USP, because I think they have a bigger tendency to confuse the listener than actually understand the complexity of who you are. Does that make sense?
It does make sense because it's what I'm experiencing, but the complexity of who I am is what makes me different, and that's where I struggle to find the balance.
Okay. Tracy, I'm sorry, but it's 1 minute to 2.
It's fine. I know it would be a difficult one, but it was partly because the other questions had come up between fishing hooks and shell words. In which scenario is it a fishing hook, and in which scenario is it a shell word? And that's why I threw some of them in there.
Yeah. So I think one word shell can be used intentionally as a fishing hook, but of course, if you add one word shell after the other, it sounds a little shallow, a little hollow, a little, let's say, too high level.
Okay.
Karsten, can I ask a question, or do you?
Yes, last question, then we have to close. But sure, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, and I hope I'm not going over ground that you've already covered, because my computer froze for a few minutes, so I was out. The word transformation and this use of shell words, right? I find that very interesting because finance transformation is my role description. And it's the first time I had sort of thought of it as being this shell word. My question is, what about change manager role? I see a lot of roles coming up these days for change managers, right? And change management, I think, is very much on, at the forefront of the agenda of a lot of companies at the moment. Do you see this word change, or this role change manager, as being shell, or do you see it as being a real role?
So I think it's a great question. I would be careful with the word change. I would actually focus on the result that you have achieved as a change protagonist, as a change driver, as a change manager. Because everybody, literally, I mean, if we had what, 90 people on the call today, I think most of us would call themselves a change manager to some extent. And that's probably true because no 2 years are the same in corporate life nowadays. But it's less about the title than it is about what you have done to actually, or what new reality, what new status quo you have created. And that's what I would sell.
Yeah.
And then companies might say, oops, that doesn't fit to us, that's not relevant to us. Or they would say, hey, that's exactly where we want to go. That guy is good, we need him.
It's just there are quite a lot of qualifications coming up, you know, on change management itself, meaning that you can actually take exams, you know, do courses, take exams in change management as a function, right? And I guess, you know, I'm sort of thinking of doing that to add on sort of functional change management expertise on top. You know?
So in which case, it's the same thing holds true for project managers and program managers. So you could then say, I'm a certified change manager and particularly proud of having accomplished A, B, and C. And then you put numbers in there, and then you have a story or USP.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Right. Okay, we promised to be on time. It's just after 2 o'clock, unless there's one really burning question, for which, of course, I'll give the time. Let's just see. One more before we close.
What will be your next presentation?
Who was that?
It's Nicole who's speaking.
We do these things regularly, and of course the von Rundstedt value chain spans across a variety of different activities in the career transformation or the new placement. So anything from documentation, storytelling, USP, networking, interviewing, all these things. So some of you who are working with Rundstedt already know that. Others might not have heard of Rundstedt before, and they don't know what we really do. So basically what we do is we have a variety of different tools and modules and approaches that help people to either find a job again or transition from one job to the other. It's all about, ultimately what we do is we teach, we train self-selling competency. And most of it is communication, and that's where things just get difficult. So that's what we do. And to answer your question, Nicole, the next one probably will be about networking again, because that's, again, the whole communication plethora culminates in this question of how do I use this to network successfully? Because we know only 30% of the vacancies exist in the open job market, whereas twice as many, 60% plus, exist in the hidden job market. And accessing these jobs without networking just doesn't work. And in order to network successfully, you need to know who you are, what's your USP, what are your success stories, and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm. You have made a huge presentation about the survey 50 plus. So it would be nice if you would also talk about it when you have the results.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that will come. That will come.
Great.
That will come separately. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
May I invite you to have a look at the website newcareer.ch. You'll find a lot of the stuff that I just talked about online. If there are other things that I can help you with, you know where to find me. I'd be delighted to support you in your process. Otherwise, we might see each other in another subsequent workshop or an online webinar. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm humbled that so many people found the time to dial in. We had almost 90 people. That's great. I wish you a great afternoon and much success in your career transition. And thank you. Goodbye.